Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 139.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I am your host, Jay Massey. And guess what, guys? Today we are going to talk about cash flow, right? You're surprised, I know. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to mention it in a completely different way you may not have considered. Here's what I mean. I got a question for you. Have you ever considered the idea of investing in foreign real estate? And when I say foreign real estate, what does that actually mean to you? Like right now, if I said the word foreign, what do you think of first? Do you think of something that's, say, I don't know, outside of the US? Or do you think of something that's a little bit closer to home? Because here's the truth of the matter. You may live in, I don't know, Texas. But because you live in Texas, guess what? North Carolina is a foreign market to you. And at the end of the day, you still need to know how the rules and regulations operate in that foreign market in order to make things work. And today we're going to actually talk about stuff outside of the US because cash flow exists everywhere. And today's guest is definitely an expert in making that happen. Not only does he make it happen, he loves it so much he decided to live there. In fact, he's been there since 2002, and you got to understand that's a complete lifestyle change. Now, I'm not asking you to move offshore, but I am saying you probably want to listen because opportunities abound. What I've said before, where there's chaos, there's cash flow. And today's guest has been able to find chaos in other places. One of the ways he was able to do that is he and his business partner formed a company in 1996, ECI Development, to go out there and make loans and make things happen for people in an international way in Central and South America so that they have the ability to still be able to take advantage of real estate offerings. And he's been doing this for a long time. Could you imagine you have an idea and it eventually becomes a bank? That's awesome. So I think today's guest is going to be able to educate myself as well as you on all the things that you already want to know about investing offshore. So help me welcome Mr. Mike Cobb. Mike, you there?
Hey, Jay, it's nice to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
I am so glad that you have made the time to be here. So I definitely appreciate, any time anyone makes to be here. So thank you as well. Now, many people know the first question I'm about to ask you. You're probably the only one who doesn't, but I've got to ask anyway. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. I mean, yesterday's superheroes, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, whatever superhero you prefer, they all, fly around or you go in an invisible plane, saving people, dressing up in special costumes, but saving people from their own problems most of the time. And I think entrepreneurs do the same thing. I mean, we do that, but we just do it for a profit and we go out there and create and make lives better. So the one thing, though, that every superhero has in common, regardless of their superpower, is that when they were first born or when they first started, they weren't so super. They have an origin story. They came from somewhere. So what we would like to know is before you were an international developer working in many different countries outside of the U.S. and bank owner and all this other stuff, well, who is Mike Cobb?
Wow. That's a big question. And you're right. You didn't give me the prep on that. So that's a sneak attack, but I like it. It's a great question. And it actually reminds me of a question that I like to ask people in the interview process when I'm interviewing for positions, because it really gets to the heart of, who is Mike Cobb or who are they? I guess I grew up in a very, very small town in northwest Pennsylvania, about an hour north of Pittsburgh. And, it was an interesting place to grow up. I didn't really fit in. My dad was a college professor, and we traveled around a lot. We went to Europe many times when I was growing up. We actually went around the world once when my dad was on a sabbatical. I lived in Yugoslavia for 3 months. So I had this weird upbringing in the sense that nobody else in the little town that I lived in, nor in the bigger school district, really had similar experiences. So, I had this incredible internationalization of my childhood, but I grew up in the country. I grew up right on the edge of a small town, and literally my backyard went into a woods that went on for miles and miles and miles. I mean, I explored the woods and never got to the end of it, so to speak. So I had this kind of weird juxtaposition of being in Europe and going around the world, and then living in the woods of Western Pennsylvania. So anyway, that was my childhood, and it positioned me interestingly enough into wanting to stay in the area to go to college. So I went to a little college about 2 hours north of Pittsburgh called Allegheny College. I majored in political science, but did not want to become a lawyer. So right after, yeah, right, I knew I did not want to be a lawyer. But one of the things I can remember, growing up, we had 10 acres, we had horses, and we had a couple ponds, we had ducks and geese and dogs and cats, and I mean, it was like a little mini farm on the edge of town. And I can remember being out with my dad one time, and I was probably 5 or 6, and I had the broken handle shovel, right, the little short shovel, and he had the big shovel, and we were, I think we were planting apple trees, as I remember. And I was 5 or 6, and whatever, I sat down, and I remember my dad looked down at me, he goes, "Get your ass off the ground, boy. When you're working, you're working." And it's one of those interesting early on memories, that like, all right, work hard, right? And I always saw him work hard, and consequently, little life lessons like that. I remember when I got my first job at Burger King when I was 16, he said, "Hey, no matter what, always look busy. And if if you don't have anything to do, pick up a rag and wipe something down, or pick up the broom and sweep the floor." And those were just little tips that he gave me that he really have influenced me and I think allowed me to be as successful as I am over the years, because you know what, it is about hard work, but it's also about smart work. And after college, I got into the computer business in the Washington, D.C. area in sales. And very early on, I was influenced by two people who I know you're familiar with, and I'm sure many people listening to this are familiar with. One is a gentleman passed away, I think last year or the year before, Zig Ziglar.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to see Zig many, many times over the last 30 years. And, one of his, one of the most powerful things that I took to heart from what he said was, if you help enough other people get what they want, you can have what you want. And, that really resonated with me in sales, and it became the foundation and basis of my sales career. And really, sort of the seeds of my entrepreneurial career as well. And it was interesting because, I was in the computer business for 12, almost 13 years, and worked for somebody else. And it was a great business. I served a lot of consumers in the computer business over the years, and we took great care of our clients. And I was very, very successful from 1986 to 1998. But in 1994, as you mentioned in the intro, I went to Belize with a friend of mine who is a lawyer. He and I went to college.
You still need one, even if you don't want to be one.
Exactly. He and I were actually fraternity brothers and in college. And he actually got into the kind of lawyering, I'm not sure that's a word, but he got into the kind of lawyering that I can respect, which is, helping people with asset protection, basically helping to protect, his clients from all the nasty lawyers out there. You'll like his joke, Jay. He has a great joke. He says it's the one lawyer out of 100 that gives the others a bad, or it's the 99 lawyers out of 100 that give the other one a bad name. Yeah. Anyway, but so he's an asset protection lawyer, and he was going to Belize doing a lot of trust and asset protection work for physicians. A lot of his clients are physicians. Anyway, and he took me along, and we went down to Belize. This was 1994, and I went back down. I said, hey, this is a great place, Ambergris Caye. It's a little island off the coast of Belize. Gosh, it's beautiful. I mean, it's about a half a mile wide and 26 miles long. The reef is a quarter mile offshore. It's an incredible little Caribbean island, right off the coast of Belize. Belize is a mainland country, but these are a string of little islands. And I said, man, Joel, next time you come back, give me more notice. I'd love to come with you. So whatever, 3 or 4 months later, he says, I'm going back. I went back and ended up buying 2 condos. He and I each bought a condo. And, it was whatever. I started going down a lot, and he was going down some, and we'd see each other some trips. Sometimes, I'd be there by myself. But I remember it was probably a year later. So it was probably mid 95. And I'm laying by the pool, and Joel and I are laying by the pool, and we're talking to the developer, and he's got 3 buildings that have been under construction for over a year that really haven't been built at all, right? I mean, 3 half-built buildings kind of thing. And so we asked the developer, his name was Jim. We said, Jim, what's the deal? Why aren't you finishing these condos? I mean, you build condos, that's how you make money. And he went on to explain that, he not just him, but in this case, but many developers up and down the coast of Belize and Roatan, Honduras, and other places were really stuck for these cash flow problems. And he went on to explain why. And it's an interesting scenario, Jay. He didn't know what he didn't know. And what he didn't know was there was no financing for North American buyers. So a guy like Jim comes down to Belize and he buys a couple acres on the beach and he builds the first 3 or 4 condo buildings, because he's got a couple $1 million in his bank account. So he builds the condo buildings. He thinks to himself, okay, I'm going to build these condos. I'm going to mark them up, 25, 30%. I'm going to sell them. I'm going to make the profit, build some more buildings, blah, 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 blah. But what happened to Jim and many other developers was North American clients would come down. They'd want to buy a condo. They'd say, all right, well, I can put 20% down, 30% down. And he'd go, whoa. No, I need 200,000. I don't need 40,000 or 60,000. The condo is 200,000.
Right.
And the problem is that banks in North America, the U.S. and Canada, would not lend on collateral in Belize, and the banks in Belize wouldn't lend to a North American. And so, put Jim and all these developers in a really tough spot where basically they had to make a choice. They had to either take a down payment and self-finance their buyers, or they had to turn sales away. And, a lot of developers kind of went different directions on that, but many, said, hey, something's better than nothing. So they'd take 20, 30% down, they'd finance these people. And so, we saw an opportunity to set up a little mortgage company to serve North Americans buying property in Belize, and then it eventually expanded throughout the region. But it got its start right there on Ambergris Caye as a way to help somebody get what they wanted, which was a condo or a home or a piece of property that they couldn't get financing for. We stepped in and solved that problem. And as you mentioned, by 2003, we turned our little mortgage company into a bank. And we went out and hired professional bankers to come run it, which it's been going well. It's a great business for us. But, in the end, when we really boil it down, we're still a mortgage company. We still help North Americans acquire property in Central and South America. And we, help developers, have their, have their cash flow issues resolved. So, boy, that was a long answer to who is Mike Cobb. I went off.
No. I let you go because I'm like, that's exactly what we want to know. Because oftentimes, here's what happens. We're inspired with an idea. We want to do something about it, but we don't know how to even recognize the opportunity, let alone actually do something about it. And you did exactly that. I mean, you're in the middle of vacation. By the way, everyone listening, if you've not been to Ambergris Caye, pay attention to the podcast. You will eventually, we're going, I'll let you know. We'll all be there. It'll be awesome together. Here's the point. If you've never been, you gotta go because it's just that beautiful. So I can understand why you went and you just ended up buying property. It makes nothing but total sense to me.
Yeah.
If you once you're there, you get it. You're like, oh, duh. But the major thing that I love is is how you identified the opportunity. There was a problem. Some people will look at that problem. Oh, there's no financing for North Americans, and go, well, I guess I can't do business here, and pack up and go home and find some other place. You said, no, let's solve this problem. We could solve this problem. We can figure out a way to provide this financing and therefore create cash flow, which is the entire point of my saying, where there's chaos, there's cash flow. Everywhere there's a problem, there's a way to take that problem and turn it into something that could be a business that solves a problem for somebody else. And for those of you also listening, if you want, we did interview Tom Ziegler, Zig Ziglar's son, a little while ago. You can look in the archives, and if you want, you can hear that particular episode as well. Now, the one thing, though, I think, and, just listening to everything that you shared, that I think is key, I think there were two very interesting things. I mean, I myself grew up overseas, military kid, and then yet at the same time, I think that has a lot to do with your willingness to even go outside the country, but also the work ethic that your dad said, making you go to work, doing those little extra things. I'm just going to ask, do you think that those two things, having grown up outside the country and or the work ethic your dad was talking about, without those two things, can you see any of the rest of this that we just discussed?
No. And I like to throw one more kind of fun element into this. By the way, let me just back up. I didn't know you had Tom Ziegler on your program. I'm going to go listen to that podcast. I mean, that's just an incredibly wonderful family with a powerful message. And speaking of powerful messages, I think you're delivering a very, very powerful, awesome message that, where there's crisis or chaos or problems, there are incredible opportunities. And that's a powerful, good message to be delivering to the marketplace, Jay. And I thank you for doing that. More people need to be, picking up on it. And I'm sure anyone listening to this podcast probably is, or they, it is self-selecting in that way.
Yes.
But anyway, the other element, let me just throw the other element into this. And I like to call it, lady luck, right? But
Sure.
I'm a very spiritual person, and I don't necessarily believe in luck per se as sort of random chance, but call it as you want, luck, fate, being blessed, which I tend to use the word being blessed. But, I think that there's a great saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Right.
And when I was in the computer business, I had salespeople that worked for me, and I hired a whole bunch of them over the years. And I would tell them that Lady Luck walks down the hallway of life and knocks on everybody's door, but you have to be ready to open it. And so the hard work to me is the preparation for the knock on the door from Lady Luck. And it also involves an element of risk taking or the ability to wade into something unknown. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be risky, but ultimately entrepreneurship is risky. But to me, it's even before risk. There's the faith in yourself and in your network. Because as much as we like to say that we're individualistic and we do things on our own, and I do believe that, because ultimately I am an individual actor, but I choose to work with others, my network, right?
Right.
But see, faith is a big part of it, that you're willing to step into the unknown, push into the unknown, work into the unknown, and have a sense that you've got the ability, your network, between yourself and your network, you have the resources and the ability and the creativity. Really, that's the key, right? The creativity to get to the other side. Or, and in fact, I think at the beginning you asked what I did, and I always have a glib answer, sort of my elevator answer ready, but I didn't give it to you, so now I'll throw this one back across the net. Who is Mike Cobb? Mike Cobb is the guy that tames chaos. That's what I do for a living.
Right.
I tame chaos, and I have a high faith in myself and in my network and our team of people to be able to wade into the unknown and tame the chaos that we find and turn it into a good solution for consumers. And and ultimately to me, that's what's meaningful and significant, because, we're all going to check out at, 86 years old, actuarially, when I'm kicking up around, the 70s or whatever, I want to be able to look back on my life and say, wow, we made a significant difference in the lives of many people, and many people coming behind us. And I think when we solve problems for other people, we help other people. And to me, it's not charity. I mean, you can do that. I mean, if you want to be Mother Teresa, go be Mother Teresa and give stuff away. But I'm a free market libertarian capitalist, and so for me, finding economic ways to help other people, earning a profit for doing it. But in the end, it's the helping others that to me gives the meaning and significance to my life and to those around us. So yeah, taming chaos, faith that you have the abilities, or your network has the abilities to do it, and then lady luck, or being blessed with the opportunities that you're ready to conquer because of the hard work that you've put in, the training, right? The calisthenics, or whatever you want to call it.
No doubt. Well, one of the interesting things that I've learned as becoming an entrepreneur is that, one, it takes courage to first become one, to be willing to face what you just said. See, I know that some of the people listening right now probably just said, you know what, maybe I don't want to be an entrepreneur. And I think that's also good. At least now you know that, hey, we don't always have the answers. We don't always know. In fact, we rarely know. We just know that we're willing to work into that unknown space and figure it out as we go. Often we develop our resources literally on the fly, which some people, that's not comfortable for them, and they don't want to live in that space. And again, total respect for that, because by the time I've created a mess, I need somebody to organize it, and that's usually who that person is. Right. But you bring up this concept of luck, and that is one of my super hot buttons, because people tell me, Jay, you just got lucky.
That's right.
I'm like, okay, what is that about? I got lucky. There's no part of my story that I feel like was just lucky. And then I ran into a completely different saying or definition of the word luck, and it made me feel a whole lot better. And now I can say, yeah, you're right. I did get lucky. And here's what I simply mean is that now we're laboring under correct knowledge. Laboring under correct knowledge, LUCK, is, okay, yeah, that's true. Once I begin to do that, then I have a shot at actually making that happen. Now, you mentioned something, and I've really got to understand, because I know there's a number of people who are probably stuck right there. You were working for someone else, but you eventually didn't. How did you make that jump, develop the courage to make that leap?
Well, that's a great question, and it was I worked for a Taiwanese Chinese couple for almost 13 years, and it was their business, they owned it, and again, I was super successful. I was on a straight commission basis, which I like, and it was performance based, and again, doing very, very well, and part of that was luck. What'd you say? Laboring under correct knowledge. It was a good time to be in the computer business. I was on the PC side of things. So good timing, good company, good people around me. But every year I would ask the owner of the business to sell me a piece of the company. And he wouldn't. He'd always have some excuse why he wouldn't sell me a piece of the business. And then he started thinking about selling the company himself. And I very quickly realized that as the highest paid employee of that company, any new buyer, I'd be the first guy out the door. And so, so I started, this was back in the mid 90s. I started looking at how I could develop some of my own non-competitive businesses, because, I'm a very black and white kind of ethical person. And I didn't want to do anything in the computer business that could even smell of conflict of interest. And not because I cared, what he would think per se, but because I just didn't want to be, work in the middle at all, right? So this mortgage company in Belize had nothing to do with the computer business. So there was no Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's about as far different as you could possibly get. Yes.
Exactly. So no conflict of interest. And it was a pretty simple evening and weekend kind of business because it wasn't a real high, now once we became a bank, it became a very different thing. But yeah, so from 94 to 98, when I was in the computer business working with our mortgage company, I was just doing that. And really by 1998, a couple things had happened. I was on the PC side of things. I could see the new direction of technology. It was moving from the computer more towards the internet, telephony, things like that. And I knew I had to do a major retooling. Hey, by the way, I was a poli-sci major in college, but when I took this job in the computer business, I actually went to Computer Learning Center for a year, 4 nights a week, 6 to 10 at night, and got the equivalent of an associate's degree in electrical engineering so that I could read the trade rags on the computer side of things, right? So again, that's that hard work side, but there were many, 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 many times that I was able to read one specific trade rag called EE Times, Electrical Engineering Times, and see these chipsets that were in development that I knew that over the course of 12 to 18 months would come into production. And we were able to win contracts because we were able to bid things that were coming down the pike, 12 months, 18 months into the future. So again, that hard work thing. But so when this whole telephony thing was coming up, I kind of thought to myself, gosh, I'm going to have to retool. I'm going to have to, just really relearn a whole bunch of stuff. And quite honestly, I wasn't interested in it. And I was far more interested, in entrepreneurial opportunities that I could do, but also in the region of Central and South America. Being a poli-sci major, it was, it kind of fit. And so in 1998, I left the computer business. Our little mortgage company was, okay. It was a nice little cash flow business, but it certainly wasn't going to support me. But I had a nice bank account from being in the computer business at the right time in the right place. And then in 1998, what we saw was the opportunity to serve people on the real estate side. And if it's okay, Jay, can I take just a minute and talk about what that opportunity was as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But before we go there, there's a very thing, you've said it a couple of times, and I think some people may totally miss it. And this is key, especially if you went to college in any way, shape, or form. Well, first, before I go there, though, for those of you wondering, when he says trade rags, this is like a magazine. It's what existed before blogs. Okay. So now that we got that covered, the other thing that I want to say is you were educated in, and as you said, political science. That's great. That's wonderful. But you didn't stop. You've been this perpetual student, and you didn't let what you thought you knew stop you from taking advantage of new opportunities. Yeah. And that is key to understand. The world changes. Just because you were educated in something or you knew something at some time that used to be relevant, that doesn't mean you can count on that same something for the entirety of your life. And all you got to do is think about something as simple as typing. Yeah, there was a time where that was actually a valuable, marketable skill. But now between the iPhone and iPad and computers and everything else, you got 2-year-olds who know how to type, simply because they can. And you don't even need to type. You just speak to your phone, and tell it what you want it to type, and then it does. So you just keep that in mind, because I commend you for being that person. I don't run into enough people who have that mindset where, hey, I went to college, I'm done. I did my thing. This is, where I am, and give me my reward now. You clearly don't have that attitude.
Are you tired of letting good cash flow generating ideas go to waste? Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready to apply for a complimentary, yes, that means free, one-on-one breakthrough session. Take action now. Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready. Again, that's cashflowdiary.com/ready. Before we get back to today's episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, your host, Jay Massey, has some important insights to share with you.
Okay, I got a question for you. I want to let you learn how to go out there and raise some capital, do some apartment buildings, find deals at discounts, and I want to do that free for you for 30 days. Would you do that for me? Would you let me teach you for 30 days exactly how to go do those things. If so, this is what I need you to do. Go over to cashflowdiary.com/reviews, REVIEWS. Cashflowdiary.com/reviews. Leave a review for the show. And what I'm going to do is give you complimentary 30-day access to our information that allows you to go out there and learn how to raise capital. Most importantly, get apartment deals done, as well as single family. Find these deals at discounts. And if you've ever wondered how to use the profit analysis quadrant, now is your time to go find out how. Go over to cashflowdiary.com/reviews. Now, let's get back to the rest of this interview.
I think a healthy curiosity is a wonderful attribute. And in fact, again, when I'm hiring, I'm asking questions that kind of dig for a lot of different things. But curiosity is one of them, because a healthy curiosity means you never stop learning, or you never stop wanting to learn, and you pursue knowledge, even if it's just for knowledge's sake. It's a worthwhile pursuit. But obviously, when you pursue it, for a more practical purpose, that's worthwhile as well. So, thank you for recognizing that, and thanks for pulling it out and mentioning it and emphasizing it, because that is key. I mean, the world is changing. The world changes. Professions change. I mean, just like the computer business changed, and I recognized it. But then I had a choice, and it was a conscious choice. Do I want to retool and relearn, or do I want to move and learn about something else? And they say, and I don't know if I have the number right, but they say it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at something. And if you look at 10,000 hours, I mean, there's 2,000 work hours in a year if you work 40-hour weeks. Well, if you work 80-hour weeks, you can become a master in 2.5 years. So, you have a choice. I mean, do you want to be a master in 5 years, or do you want to work your ass off and be a master in 2.5 years? And you know what? I think, that's another kind of choice that people have. But you can't become a master without putting in 10,000 hours. You decide how many years it takes you to get to the mastery of a subject.
Indeed. Yes. Well said. And now, yes, I definitely want to talk some more about the real estate opportunities, because you guys are now operating in like 5 different countries in Latin America now, right?
Well, currently we're operating in 4, and we're looking for property in 2 more. So yeah, we'll be in 7 countries by the end of this year.
You underachiever, you. Okay. I love it.
You're right. I am, because it could be 8 or 9. But anyway, yeah.
Right. So yes, dude, tell us about this real estate that you clearly love so much, because you picked up shop and moved. It's like, wow, that's serious right there. That's commitment.
Well, I've actually moved twice, Jay. But in 1998, we bought a little resort on Ambergris Caye. It was one of the developers that we'd been financing some of his sales, and he was going out of business. Unfortunately, Ambergris Caye, attracts a lot of, people who are wanting to sit on a bar stool, and they think, owning a resort and running a resort, they can manage it from the bar stool, and many of them don't make it. And he was one of them. And we ended up buying his resort in a foreclosure situation, and it was a very good purchase. And my wife and I moved there for 6 months, basically, to turn around a resort. Now, you talk about wading into the unknown. I mean, Jay, my saying was, you know what? I knew about as much about a resort as you can learn from staying in them. When we bought that resort, I knew nothing about running a resort. I mean, zero, right? And but that didn't stop us from buying it in a foreclosure and stepping into a world of problems. You can imagine a resort in foreclosure. Just the payables this guy had, the outstanding bills, the upset workers. I mean, on and on and on and on. And anyway, it was a nightmare. But you know what? It's bath by fire. And again, we trusted in ourselves, my wife and I. We trusted in ourselves to move there. We trusted in our network of business partners and resources that we could bring to bear. And if we didn't have it, like you said a minute ago, you could hire it, and we did. And we got through it. And within 6 months, we turned a failing resort property into a marginally profitable resort business, and we moved back to the United States. So we did a 6-month stint in Belize. But it was interesting because what we saw, and this comes back again to the real core tenet of my my business philosophy is, what is the need that we can serve? What's the unique selling proposition, or what's the unique serving? I like that better, by the way, the USP, unique serving proposition. But the and that was this, that if you had $1 million, just pick a number, but if you had big money, if you had $1 million, you could go to the Cayman Islands, you could go to Bermuda, you could go to Bahamas, you could go to Costa Rica, and you could buy something really nice that met North American standards. But if you were middle class, if you had $150,000, $200,000, and you wanted to go buy a property in same place, you probably couldn't do anything in the Caymans for $200,000. But anyway, but Central America, South America, you had a couple $100,000, and you wanted to have North American standard product. Water pressure, all the doorknobs at the same height, all the kitchen countertop at the right height, and an electrical outlet on every wall of the bedroom. I mean, we're not talking rocket science here. We're just talking just stuff that's been figured out in the U.S. and standardized in the U.S. And so if you had $200,000 and you came to Belize, for example, or Roatan or Nicaragua or Costa Rica, you had to settle. You had to settle for something less than North American standard, because nobody was building $150,000 product for middle class North Americans that met a North American standard. Again, if you had $1 million, you got a North American standard product. But if you had 150, 200,000, you were settling. And what we said was, hey, look, a lot of this stuff is free. It doesn't cost any money to put the door handles all at the same height in a house or a condo. That's free. It doesn't cost anything to put the kitchen countertop at the height that North Americans are accustomed to. It costs like another $3 or $4, maybe $10. It probably costs $10 to put an outlet on every wall of the bedroom, right? I mean, so we're talking about these little non-cost things that change the quality of life. Water pressure, that actually costs a little bit more money, but water, but water pressure is a pretty high quality of life thing. Anyway, so we said, look, with just a little bit of money, we can charge, say 10% more than our competitors, but deliver a product that's 20 or 30% more comfortable and familiar and better, we believe. And so we said that this is another way we can serve North American consumers. So we had the finance side to help them buy the products that they were looking for. But again, because we were helping them buy products that we would go and evaluate, because we're giving a loan, we're going to go see the collateral, right? So we'd walk in and I'd be shaking my head going, oh my gosh, I mean, this is crazy. And so we said, we can do better. And so we did. We started a real estate company to do better. And that's really how ECI Development was formed, was to provide a North American standard product. And when we looked at the marketplace in the U.S., we said, who really nailed this? Who got it right in the United States? And Webb, Webb, for some of your folks, especially in the southern part of the United States, would know the Webb brand, Sun City. He started out in Phoenix, Arizona. And what Webb understood, he had 3 strokes of genius. One, that people were going to want warm weather retirement, and a lot of folks did, moving out of the northern United States and out of Canada. They wanted someplace warm in the winter. But his real that was a stroke of genius, because he was the first to really understand that. But he had 2 other strokes of genius. One was that people wanted community. People wanted friends and neighbors and activities. And in order for you to have, friends and neighbors, you got to have things to do and places to do it. So he built clubhouses and game rooms and places that people could get together and hold their coin collectors club or the bridge group or whatever. So he created these social spaces as part of his community, his Sunset communities, and it was phenomenally successful. So he had all these people moving there who could make new friends, turning neighbors into fast friends, the spirit of getting together. And one of the statements that he's famous for is this. He says, concrete, steel, and lumber make the buildings, but people make the community. And so he was the first developer to really get that. And his third stroke of genius, first, that people wanted warm weather, second, that they want community. His third stroke of genius was that not everybody wants to live in the desert of Arizona. And some people want to live in Texas, California, Florida, the Piedmonts, the Carolinas, whatever. And so when we looked at the U.S. model, we said, look, these wheels have already been invented in the U.S. We don't have to invent this wheel. What's the best wheel out there? And we looked at Del Webb and we said, this guy nailed it. So we understood, we saw the desire of North Americans to want to live in Central and South America. So that part fit his first stroke of genius. His second stroke of genius was community. And so we said, look, we're going to build clubhouses. We're going to build the amenities, the tennis courts, the golf courses, the swimming pools, the bars, the restaurants. We're going to create these social spaces and amenities before we sell property so that when somebody buys a home or a condo, they don't have to hear about what the developer's going to do. They can actually come and play golf, or they can come play tennis, or they can go hang out in the clubhouse and play bridge or whatever. And then the third stroke of genius that Del Webb had that we modeled was not everybody wants to live in the desert of Arizona. Well, guess what? Not everybody wants to live on a beautiful Caribbean island. I can't figure out why, but anyway. So, but it's interesting. Some people we bought the property in Nicaragua, which is our Grand Pacifica project. Some people are surfers, right? They're not divers and snorkelers. They're surfers. And so they want Pacific Ocean. They want big waves. Some people want a vineyard type of retirement experience, something like you would get in the Napa Valley. Or some people want highlands, which is where they grow coffee, which is a beautiful climate. It's maybe 4,000 to 5,000 feet above sea level in the tropics. And at night it's 70 degrees, and in the daytime it's 80 degrees every day of the year. It's like springtime every day. And so we realized, much like Del Webb saw in the United States, that there's sort of different strokes for different folks. And some people want Caribbean, some people want Pacific, some people want vineyard, some people want highlands. And so that's really been our business model, to develop communities, real communities with the sense of community for North American retirees that meet all the North American familiarity and standards, but give people the choice of location, geography, climate, and scenery. And that's really been the basis of our business. And it's gone unbelievably well, Jay. It's just, because we took a wheel that had already been invented and invented very well, and we just took it south of the border. And I don't claim any brilliance there at all. We copied a great model, but it's been phenomenally successful. So and that's where we are today. And in terms of moving, when we bought our Grand Pacifica property in the year 2000, we spent a couple years kind of trying to figure out what we were doing, and it took a couple years because Jay, we bought 3.5 miles of beach. This is incredible. This property looks like Southern California. It feels like Southern California. And we have 3.5 miles of Pacific Ocean front and 2,500 acres. And it took us some time to figure out that we were really building a town, right? We're going to be building a town. And when we finally figured that out, we went out and hired a city planner, a company that builds towns. In fact, they built Celebration, Florida, which is Walt Disney's town right outside of Orlando. Walt Disney wanted to build a town, and they hired a company called Urban Design Associates to come design their town for them. Well, we figured if it was good enough for Disney, they were probably good enough for us. So, so again, not inventing a wheel, we went out and hired Urban Design Associates to design a town for us. But in 2002, it was time to actually start to hire engineers and architects and put out RFPs for infrastructure work and to start to build the roads, the water, the sewer, the fiber optic telecommunications, start to build the golf course and all those kinds of things. So my wife and I moved here to Managua, Nicaragua in October of 2002. We've now been here 12 years. We moved here with a 2-year-old daughter. We've since had another daughter. My daughters are now 14 and 10, and they've grown up here. And it's a wonderful place to raise kids. The Nicaraguan folks are just so warm, friendly, awesome. There are a lot of reasons we stay in Nicaragua, but truly the people are the core fundamental reason that we've stayed as long as we have, and really can't imagine moving back to the United States. And we've made wonderful friends, and it's a great place to live.
That's a hard concept for me to even get my mind around, is not wanting to move back to the U.S. However, I can, to some degree, I get some understanding of that. But I hope everybody was listening, because I don't know if you heard it, but he did it again. He just found a problem and he created a solution. The solution was, and he didn't really create the solution. He just brought an existing solution to a community that didn't know that it existed. And most importantly, he was laboring under correct knowledge, someone else's knowledge. He just chose to labor under it. And doing that has created the developments in the communities that he's had. And I mean, just the idea, the concept, for some of you, this just blew your mind. The concept of having 3.5 miles of beach, you're like, what? How do you figure that out? I can tell you, if you were listening, if not, rewind, listen again. He was clearly saying it took us a couple of years to figure out, took us some time to figure out what we were doing. That meant he didn't know, and that's okay. Most entrepreneurs don't know all the time. And the idea we think we have isn't exactly what comes to fruition or what the marketplace wants at the end of the day. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm going to give you a great example to emphasize that point right there. Okay. And a humbleness, which is so key. So it was probably 2001. We'd owned the property for about a year. And my business partner and I, we figured we were going to do what most developers do. We were going to put a road from one end of the property to the other, 250 feet back from the beach or whatever it was, chop it up into, 100-foot wide lots, whatever, half-acre lots on the ocean, sell them for $100, $150, $200,000 each, and call it a day, right? That's kind of what we thought we would do. And I can remember we were sitting in a board meeting. And this is why you want board members. This is why you want, if you're an entrepreneur, even if you're too small to, quote, have a formal board, find an informal board. Find a group of retired business executives and buy them lunch or dinner 4 times a year, okay? This is just so important. I can remember sitting in a board meeting, and the chairman of our board of directors at the time was a retired Fortune 50 CEO. And retired guys are easy to get, by the way, because they're usually bored and looking for something to do, and their wife wants them out of the house. So you can definitely get them for lunch 4 times a year. You just need to go out and ask. And he was from a chemical business. So, totally unrelated, but he understood the business of business. He could see things from a 30,000-foot perspective. And I remember me and Joel and I were sitting there arguing about how we were going to do something on this, chop it up into lots or whatever. And I don't know if you can hear me pound on the table, but he goes, boys, settle down. He looked over at us and he goes, do you understand you're building a city? And Joel and I just kind of looked up and we thought, wow, he's right. The property's 3.5 miles long and 1 mile deep, right? That's a city or a town or whatever you want to call it. You know what I'm saying? And so here's this guy pounding on the table, boom, boom, boom. Hey, boys, right? And it's that kind of, wow. And the humbleness to realize that, listen to what he said, right? And to recognize we didn't know. We had no clue, but he had a darn good idea of what that 30,000-foot perspective was. We were building a city in his mind, a town, whatever. And so to be able to pick that up, stop, listen, and then move on. So really wanted to just tell that story to emphasize your point that we had no clue, Jay. We had no clue.
And what I'm trying to stress here is having no clue is okay, and understand that he had no clue, but he still owned the property already. He had still written the offer. He was making plans. He was going to figure it out on the way. Don't let what you don't know stop you from taking the action you know you should do today.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
And bring in some old people who've been lots of times who can make sure you're keeping your eye, on the forest.
Yeah, go to Sun City. In fact, I'm sure there's a few there that might be willing to help you out for sure as you continue to go through. Now, there's so many things that you guys are into, the international plays and all this other stuff. As we come to a close here, I've got to ask the question: how does someone who's been listening going, yeah, this sounds like, something I'd want to find out more about? What's their best course of action?
Well, easy. Come visit the ECIDevelopment.com website and take a look. It's the portal that'll get you to the information about properties in Belize, properties in Nicaragua, property in Costa Rica, property in Panama. If you fill out an inquiry form, we'll add you to our newsletters. We send out a weekly newsletter called Hemispheres, which kind of touches on all of the different countries. It touches on banking. It touches on entrepreneurial opportunities offshore. So we publish that weekly. It's an e-newsletter. We publish a monthly newsletter on Nicaragua and in Belize. We'll be starting up our monthly Panama and Costa Rica publications as well. So again, that's the easiest way, Jay. And then the best thing to do would be come visit. I know you're thinking about putting a trip to Ambergris Caye together, and we get that figured out and get some dates. I think, I can tell you that it's always more fun to come with other people who share a similar philosophy, an entrepreneurial philosophy, because you know what? The experience in and of itself is great. The experience when shared with others is phenomenal. And obviously spending time with you, Jay, will be a great thing. And I'll be there and we'll have a lot of fun. We'll go snorkeling. We'll do a sunset catamaran. We'll do a rooftop cocktail on top of Key Bank. We'll just have a great time and we'll enjoy the company of one another. And yeah, we'll look at real estate opportunities. Some of them will be ours, but it's an island. I mean, you're not hostage. Run around, jump on a golf cart, and go look at other real estate opportunities. But there are great opportunities to be seen there. But again, coming with some other folks, I think a shared experience just takes it from great to awesome.
Indeed, 100%. And now I've got to ask that final closing question, because I know many are wanting to hear your perspective on this as well. There's probably someone listening, or someone who's maybe listening for the first time or even the 100th time, who's considering, I want to become one of these superheroes, one of these entrepreneurs, one of these people who can identify problems and begin to solve them for other people and create solutions that generate profits and jobs and housing and all this other stuff. I want to do this. What would you say to that person who's having that thought or feeling that way, like their idea could actually make it in the marketplace? What would you say to them if they were sitting in front of you right now?
I mean, sort of the glib answer is the Nike "just do it," right? And right. I think ultimately that really is it. Just do it, right? But that's too simplistic. It doesn't really encompass the complexities of what it really takes to just do it. And I think courage. You used the word courage, and I think that's right. I think it is courage. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Fear is something natural and healthy. It's a warning mechanism that our brain gives us. Whoa, be careful here, right? Courage is the action of continuing on despite fear. Okay, using fear as a guide post to say, hey, don't stray too far off the path here. Let's really think this twice, or measure twice, cut once. I mean, there's a lot of things, right? But having the courage to proceed, but then ultimately, I think the faith, because it is a faith thing, right? To say, hey, I have the ability, or I have the resources, or I can tap into the resources to achieve this objective, and then always assume it's going to be twice as difficult as you imagine. It's going to take twice as long as you imagine, and it's going to cost twice as much as you imagine. And so give yourself lots of margins of error to deal, and then persistence. I mean, so courage, faith, and persistence, I think, are probably the three attributes. But in the end, Nike had it right. just do it. And he goes, you can do the analysis to paralysis, and that doesn't do it. At some point, you just got to shove off and have faith.
Indeed, very much. Well, I definitely want to thank you for investing your time here with the Cash Flow Diary audience today.
Indeed. Jay, thanks for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It is time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? It means if even the slightest thing pricked your interest, you're like, ooh, I can have a Napa Valley experience, but internationally at a great price. Yeah, that means you're going over to ECI Development right now. You want to begin to figure these things out. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Go see the world. Having grown up internationally myself, I'm telling you, it is a great experience. If you've never been outside of the U.S., hey, go. You never know who you're going to meet, what you may find, or more importantly, what opportunities lie ahead. It's been fun talking to you again. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.